What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. I'm going to continue our schedule preview projected record series here with the Tennessee Volunteers. Before we get to 2024, let's look back at the schedule from 2023. Here was the schedule from last season for Tennessee, going 9-4, losing road games to Florida, Alabama, and Missouri, and then losing at home to Georgia. And really, all these games were not all that close. The Alabama game, I still look back at that. I don't know if you guys remember that game, but Tennessee, they had that game in the first half. It looked like they were going to win easily and just played terribly in the second half. But anyways, that was a tough loss there. Missouri and Georgia, Florida, those are the games they lost, and then they took care of business in the rest of their games. And again, it's a schedule that wasn't all that tough. Had Virginia in the non-conference. They weren't great. Did have to play Alabama, and they play them every year, so that's no big deal there. They're used to that one. And then they played Texas A&M, so they didn't have to play, Ole Miss, didn't have to play LSU. So it was a tough schedule, but it wasn't horrible. We look to 2024, and this is the schedule for this upcoming season. We'll break it down. First, look at the non-conference. They play Chattanooga. They play NC State. That game will be in Charlotte, Kent State, and UTEP. So 3 pretty easy wins, more than likely. And then NC State and Charlotte could be interesting, but I feel like Tennessee is going to be the better team in that matchup. So a respectable, I guess, a respectable non-conference schedule. I mean, not really when you've got 3 cupcakes. You look at the home schedule: Chattanooga, Kent State, UTEP. Just talked about them. Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. So Alabama will be tough at home, but I think they're going to be in pretty good shape in those other 3 games. Kentucky's always a tough one. Florida's always a tough one. Mississippi State's a game that they'll be favored probably by a good bit. And so that's going to be the home schedule for Tennessee. All winnable games. They could absolutely go undefeated at home, especially with the turnover at Alabama. And, we really don't know how good they're going to be. You look at the road schedule, and then, again, there's that NC State game. It's a neutral field game. But then you've got Oklahoma on the road, Arkansas on the road, Georgia on the road, and Vanderbilt. Arkansas and Vandy shouldn't be too tough, even on the road. But Oklahoma and Georgia, both on the road. Those are going to be very tough matchups there for Tennessee. I'm not saying they have no chance, especially against Oklahoma, but they're definitely, I think, going to be underdogs in both of those. So let's break it down. Let's go week by week. They'll start with Chattanooga in week 1, and then it's NC State week 2 in Charlotte. So not week 1, but week 2 for this non-conference matchup. Kent State on September the 14th at home, and then they'll get Oklahoma on the road on the 21st. They get their first bye week in between Oklahoma and Arkansas. So those are not actually back-to-back road games. I mean, they are, but they're not back-to-back weeks because there's a bye week in between. Boy, it would really have been nice for Tennessee if those games could be flipped. You play Arkansas, then you get a bye week going into Oklahoma. That would be much better. But you're talking about in their first 4 games, NC State and Oklahoma, 2 tough games. And then, of course, the grind of the SEC. After their first bye week, they get Arkansas on the road. Then it's Florida at home, and then Alabama at home. And then after Alabama, so again, after a big game, they get a bye week. They'll get a bye week before Kentucky. That's really interesting. You'd like to have your bye weeks before going on the road to play Oklahoma and maybe before Alabama, not after those games. So I don't think the bye weeks are great. But, we talk about that Alabama game. How many times have you heard about Alabama beating teams twice? Because teams are so beat up from playing Alabama. Of course, this is a different Alabama team, so I don't know if it'll still hold true, but maybe a bye week after Alabama isn't the worst thing. Kentucky there on the 2nd of November. Then they're back home for Mississippi State on the 9th. And then it's a tough one on the road at Georgia on November 16th. They get a bit of a break with UTEP on the 23rd. And they close things out with Vanderbilt on the 30th. That game will be on the road, but still a couple of easier games to close out the season. Really, their season, it's going to be between Oklahoma and Georgia. I mean, that's the stretch for Tennessee. The first 2 games, and again, that's first 3 games, assuming they get by NC State. You've got those 3 games to start off the season. You've got 2 pretty easy games to close out the season. But those 7 games in the middle of the season, that's going to be a bit of a grind. Good news, again, they get 2 bye weeks in that stretch. Again, no road, back-to-back road games in terms of back-to-back weeks because of the bye week. Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and Mississippi State, 4 home games. 4 conference home games in a row. You don't see that very often. So they've got a really good opportunity if they can take care of business at home. They lose on the road to Oklahoma, lose on the road to Georgia. They could still go 10-2 and get to the college football playoff with a 12-team playoff. So the schedule sets up in a way that I think makes Tennessee a legitimate playoff contender in 2024. Here were some of the projections from last year for Tennessee, and you see an 8-4 record. Their projection was 9-3 with the formula that we use. Our prediction was 10-2. I was higher on this team, thought they were going to be better than they were. Athlon had them at 9-3. The over/under was at 9.5. So a disappointing year for Tennessee. Again, expectations really closer to 9-3 or even 10-2 with that over/under at 9.5, and they went just 8-4. So again, not great last year for Tennessee. A little bit of a disappointment, but still, it was a solid year there at 8-4. But again, this is the schedule and this is the scale that we use. So less than 20, over 80%. Those are the games that are almost guaranteed wins or losses. Your 20 to 29, your 70 to 80% games. Those are games where I think the spread will be double digits. Games that it would be a pretty big upset if the underdog were to win. 30 to 39, 61 to 70 games where I think the spread will be closer to a touchdown. And these are the upsets that are more likely to happen. And then 40 to 60% games where I think, really, these are games that can go either way. Yeah, there's going to be probably a favorite in these games, but still, it's not going to be enough to where you really don't see this game potentially being a game that could go either way. So we'll start with the easy wins. Chattanooga, Kent State, UTEP. Pretty much guaranteed wins. I mean, I would be shocked if Tennessee, if any of these games are even close at all. So they should roll in those 3 games. So you get 3 easy wins. And then you got Florida, Mississippi State, and on the road at Vanderbilt. All games where I think Tennessee will be favored by double digits, 10 to 14 points more than likely. I know Florida beat them last year, but this time it's in Knoxville. And Tennessee, I mean, they should be improved from last season. Florida, I don't know. They might be kind of the same. Mississippi State should be about the same as well. And then Vanderbilt is just so far behind everyone else in the SEC. But that game is on the road. That's why it's in the blue and not in the green. If that was a home game, it would be in the green. But again, these are games where Tennessee should be a pretty comfortable favorite. I kind of second-guessed the Florida game. But, if you bump Florida down into the purple, I think you could also easily bump Vanderbilt up to the green. So it kind of works out either way. But this is the formula that we use. And then NC State, Arkansas, Kentucky games where I think Tennessee will be favored by about a touchdown. Arkansas only because it's on the road. That's the only reason that game is not in the blue. And then Kentucky at home, that's why that one is in the purple. And then NC State, I just think Tennessee's going to be a better team than NC State. Neutral field should be favored by about a touchdown, again, in all 3 of these games. So that means they're going to be a pretty big favorite in 9 of their 12 games. I would say at least a touchdown favorite. Maybe Kentucky turns out to be better than we think. Maybe Arkansas, NC State, I don't know. But those are the games that Tennessee, if you're a Tennessee fan, you think we really need to win these 9 games. We've got to win these 9 games. Then if you can win, 1 or even 2 of these other 3, you're in great shape. And I do think they'll be a clear underdog against Georgia. I think that's one where they will be about a touchdown underdog. And if Georgia's as good as I think they might be, that could even be bigger. They might even be a 2-touchdown underdog in that game. But we're going conservative. It's very early. And again, these are not predictions. But I do think they will clearly be an underdog in that game. And then you've got Oklahoma and Alabama. These are the games that are going to make or break the season, I think, for Tennessee. Right now I'd say they probably won't beat Georgia, especially on the road. If you lose to Oklahoma and Alabama and go 9-3, probably not going to make the college football playoff. But if you can just win one of these 2 games, you've got a really, really good shot at 10-2. I've kind of been looking, though, at different teams. And, I think we could possibly see 1 or 2 10-2 teams left out just because, again, the ACC and the Big 12, their champions are going to get in. And then you're also going to have a group of 5 team get in. So that could potentially knock out a 10-2 team. So even 10-2 doesn't guarantee you a spot, but you feel pretty good. And again, those 2 games, if they can find a way to just win one of them, and let's say they don't beat Georgia and they take care of business everywhere else, they can get to 10-2 and again potentially make the college football playoff. But the odds would say they're going to go 9-3. That's what the projection is. Again, when we do our formula here, the odds would say when you've got 3 games in the purple here, NC State, Arkansas, and Kentucky, they would say that you're probably going to lose one of those. Even though you're favored, when you have 3 of those games, you're probably going to lose one of those. And then, split Oklahoma and Alabama, lose to Georgia. That's how you can get to 9-3. 10-2 is definitely possible, though. Like I said earlier, 8-4. If you lose all 3 of those, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Georgia, and then get upset somewhere else, they could fall to 8-4. But I think 9-3 is a very fair projection. And again, I think it's more likely they go 10-2 than 8-4, but we'll see how things go and how good all these teams are. It's very early, like I said, and again, not an official prediction, but the projection for Tennessee is 9-3 with a pretty manageable schedule. Do you guys agree or disagree with this projection? Let me know your thoughts on the balls down in the comments below.